Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So today I'm going to walk through a revision to the investment tracking spreadsheet that I've made available for years. It's a free Google sheet, and I've made a pretty significant update to it. And so I'm going to walk through today how it works. You can get access to the new spreadsheet with the link I'll put below the video. I still have the old version too, so you have access to that if you want as well. I'll leave that link below the video as well. I was going to walk through the spreadsheet. Let me explain sort of the issue I was trying to address with this new version. So this is the old version of the spreadsheet. This is just demo data that I put in here. And there's three sheets. There's sort of a net worth spreadsheet that I threw in at one point, but it's really not the significant part of the spreadsheet. It's the real significance is in this holdings sheet where you list all your investments. And you can also include the account name, like, my 401k, spouse's IRA, whatever you want to call them. And then once you input all your data, you can go to this by asset class and see your allocation. You can put in your target allocation. This shows you your actual allocation, the difference, any amounts you should buy or sell of each fund to get you back to your target. So it's kind of a rebalancing tool. But the other thing about it is the price of each of your investments is updated through a Google Finance function. So that's nice because prices change, every day, and so it updates automatically. So here was the problem. You could have a fund, and this one here, this first one's a perfect example. This is the Vanguard Target Retirement Income Fund. Inside that fund are 4 or 5 different funds, including U.S. stocks, international stocks, U.S. bonds, international bonds, tips. But when you go to categorize it, you can only pick one of these. And so how do you deal with an investment that spans multiple asset classes? And with this old version of the spreadsheet, I'll call this spreadsheet 1.0, you really couldn't. I had ended up, for my own personal use, creating a version where I would input the same investment multiple times, each with a different asset class, and then I added a column for percentages. It got very convoluted. And so the new spreadsheet is in theory designed to allow you to assign multiple asset classes to a single investment. And so the new spreadsheet, here it is, and I have this README file. The first one, by the way, and let me actually hit refresh on this because it should update. Oh yeah, no, I had it correct. It was updated. So I'm going to add a link to this video right here. So I won't go over the details of this. It's fairly self-explanatory, although I will point out 5. Use this spreadsheet at your own risk. I've tested it. There's a lot of things I want to change, a lot of things I still don't like about it, but you should check the math and make sure it's correct. And I've also created this form. If you click it, you can input your name and then what you found confusing about the spreadsheet, what didn't work as expected, and things you'd like me to improve. So I'd certainly appreciate your feedback, and you can do that with that form. Okay, with that said, some of this spreadsheet's going to look similar, like the holdings column, and we'll look at this. It looks fairly similar to the first version. And the by asset class, which I kind of think of as a dashboard, looks fairly similar as well. There are some differences we'll talk about. The real differences, though, come in this data tab down here and this allocation matrix. So let's start with the data tab. In this tab, and I'm going to make it a little bigger, we have account names. So you can enter here all of the account names for all the different accounts you have. And I'm going to walk through a more involved example in a minute. But you can name it whatever you want. You might just say like Vanguard Roth IRA, right? I use something that identifies what it is, the account type, if it's mine or my wife's, where it's located. You can put whatever you want here. But for now, I'm just going to stick for this. I'm going to go through 2 examples, this simple example and then a little more involved example. I'll just call it for the moment taxable account. I'll just keep one. And then you list the asset classes that you want to track. And you can describe them however you want. For example, I could make US, I could just, instead of spelling out small cap, I could just do SC, right? Or whatever. And it doesn't have to be, it can be anything. So I could put in here artwork. I could put in here Bitcoin, right? I mean, you can put in whatever asset classes you want to track. And for this simple demo, you can see what I've got: U.S. stocks, international stocks, bonds, and U.S. small cap. And then this is my target allocation. So you'd put your target allocation, and you want to always highlight it, make sure, check down here to make sure it equals 100%. And then here you list all of the tickers of all of the investments you have in all of your accounts. And it doesn't have to map to these asset classes. These are two independent lists. And you may have more tickers than asset classes. I suppose you could have more asset classes than tickers, right? So it doesn't need to be one-to-one. So you can put them in here. And then if the Google Finance function is working, it will automatically add the name of the investment. This is just for your reference. So if I put another one in, let's say I put in VT. Well, that's VTI. Well, it'll give us that. But let's do VT. And it pulls up the name. There are going to be some things where the name won't work. So like a money market fund. If I put in SPAX, which is a Fidelity money market fund, it's probably going to give me an error. Yeah, it doesn't know money market funds, and you can just ignore that. It's not going to affect anything in the spreadsheet. The same is true if you're tracking non-publicly traded things, right? So if you've got a car collection, I don't know, whatever. But we're going to just keep it simple. This is basically a 3-fund portfolio, except I've also added U.S. small cap, and I've done that for a reason that you'll see in a minute. So, all right, so you list all your accounts, you list all the asset classes you want to track, and then your target allocation, and then just list all of the investments that you have across all of your accounts. And then we go to the allocation matrix, and I've got some of it filled out already. This is what it would look like. You wouldn't have any of these numbers, these percentages. I'll take them out for a second. What this sheet does, it takes the tickers that you entered here and automatically adds them here. So for example, if I added another ticker, VT, and we go over to the allocation matrix, it shows up right down here. Right, so it's going to automatically add all of your tickers. And then it's also going to add all of your asset classes across the top here. So again, just to show you, if we added, I don't know, I'll just put in Bitcoin. I don't own any Bitcoin, but whatever. You see it adds it here. Okay? And what you then do, get rid of that, is you tell the spreadsheet, you enter into the spreadsheet how much of each of these tickers are allocated to these asset classes. So for example, VSMAX is a Vanguard small cap index fund. Now, if you looked at this, let's actually go to Morningstar for example, for a moment, because this is an important thing to keep in mind. If we look up VSMAX in Morningstar, and we go to the portfolio tab, and then we go to weight, you'll notice that it's not all small cap. It's got what, 11, 25, 30%, if I'm doing the math right. Is that right? 14, 24, 20, yeah. It's got a lot in mid-cap stocks. So you may want to track that, but it's not necessary, right? So for example, in my case, if we go back to my target asset allocation, I'm not targeting, in this example, a specific allocation to mid-cap. I am targeting small cap, and then everything else I'm just sort of lumping together as U.S. stocks. So in this case, since I'm not targeting mid-cap, if we go back to the allocation matrix, I'm probably just going to say, you know what, this is close enough. I'm just going to say this is 100% small cap. Now, what you could do, actually, as I think about it, maybe a better approach would be 70% small cap, because again, if we go back here, 20, 40, 60, yeah, it's 69%. There's some rounding. So we'll do that, 70% small cap. And then 30% will be U.S. stocks, which is, in this case, sort of my catch-all for just anything other than small cap, right? For VXUS, that's international, so we'll just do 100%. B&D is a bond fund. Again, you could break out the types of bonds, if that's important to you, between U.S. treasuries and agency bonds and corporate bonds. But for our case, in this example, we'll just lump them together. And then VTI. VTI is about 8% small cap. But let's double check. Going to look it up, go to portfolio. Yeah, 3.6. It's 8% small cap. So I'll put 92% for just U.S. stocks and 8% of this fund in U.S. small cap. And this just tells me that everything totals 100. Each row totals 100. You want to make sure it totals 100%. And so what this is effectively telling the spreadsheet is when it comes to calculating the value of all of our investments by asset class, when you see VSMAX, give 30% of that to U.S. stocks and 70% to U.S. small cap. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. And then once you've got that filled out, you go to holdings. Now let me make this a little smaller just to get it all on a single page. I've already filled this out. And I just threw in 1,000 shares of each, for just to throw in a number. But when you come to this page, you'll get a drop down that will list all of the accounts you put here. So we can just add a couple. We'll just add 401k and IRA. If we added more and we go back to the holding page, you'd see they're all automatically in this drop down. And then the account type is just one of three: taxable, pre-tax, which would be traditional, or tax-free, which for me would be Roth or HSA. And you'll see what I do with that in a minute. And then the tickers, again, based on our data entry here, it gives us a drop down with those options. And then again, this just fills out the name using a Google Finance function. Here it is. Again, there could be some, like if I put in SPACs, it's gonna have an error. That's fine. You could hard code that if you wanted to. In other words, you could come in here and say, let me just show you. I'm gonna ignore the drop down, and I'll just see if it lets me. It doesn't let me. Oh, that's funny. I guess I programmed that right. We'll come back to data. Let's add SPACs. Then we'll go to holdings, and we'll switch it to SPACs. And we should get an error here. We'll also get an error on price. So here I could hard code, so in other words, get rid of this Google Finance function, right? And I could just put in the name of, I don't know what the name is, but I'll just type in SPACs, right? And then I could type in the price as $1 because they're $1 a share. If I do that, by the way, I'm going to reverse this. I'm going to go back. What did I have in here? I guess it was VSMAX. If I go back to it, it won't fill in the name using the Google Finance function because I deleted it, right? But that's fine. I can just go up one cell, copy this, come down and paste it, and it pastes the formula and it works again. There we go. And so I put that in, and you're going to put in the shares that you own. I've just put in 1,000, and then it automatically puts in the last reported change. I'm recording this after the market closed on Wednesday, March 5th. Of course, it'll take a little time for a mutual fund to update, but the ETFs should be current. It pulls in the price, then just does some simple math to get the value. Now, I do have some things here on expense ratio that aren't working, including the weighted. I need to fix that. The reason you're not seeing expense ratios here is because Google Finance does not pull in the expense ratios of ETFs. It will pull in the expense ratio of a mutual fund, but not an ETF. I don't know why. I think what I'm going to do is overwrite all of this in a version, and maybe I'll even do it right after I record this video, where you'll manually enter the expense ratio. And the reason I don't think that's a big deal is because they hardly ever change. So I'll probably just have you just assume you're going to manually enter these. I will tell you that this is the formula I use to pull in the expense ratio. If maybe all you have is mutual funds and you want to use it, you could add it back in. But I'm going to pull it out because it just doesn't work consistently. And that's it. So you've entered all of your holdings. And now we go to the by asset class. Let's hope this works. There's a lot going on underneath the hood, and I'm not a professional programmer, but I've done my best. So what this should do, let's walk through this. This list of asset classes, again, comes from data, right? From the asset classes that you entered here. I'm going to actually get rid of SPAXX since we're not using it. And then this target allocation comes from here. It's not in the same order. When you get here, you'll notice the asset classes are in alphabetical order. But bonds are 25%, international 20, U.S. small cap 10, and U.S. stocks 45, and that should map to what you have here. I think it does. And then this calculates the actual percentage of your actual portfolio. So in other words, you got these actual numbers here. Now again, when we think of U.S. stocks, let's look at small cap. Small cap, it's just under 100 grand, right? If we go to holdings, the actual small cap fund right here is 109. But because of the allocations we've made here, it doesn't give small cap credit for 100% of VSMAX. It only gives it 70% credit, plus it gives 8% credit to VTI. And when you add all that up, it should come out to $99,617. Again, when you put your own portfolio in there, you want to double check that math. I've checked it several times. I've not seen an error. If you see an error, please let me know. It then calculates the difference. And here, this column right here is really the only thing you need to enter. And all this does is say, when the difference between your target allocation and the actual allocation gets so big, when do you want an alert? In other words, when do you want this cell here to turn red? And what I've said here is for bonds, I've got 5%. For international stocks, I put 15, and because it's only off by 8, it's not turned red. If I turn this back to 8%, it turns red. I tend to base this myself depending on how big the allocation is. So if it's a 45% allocation, I might have this at 5%. If it's a 10% allocation, maybe 2, I don't know, 2 or 3 at 20%. This is as much art as science. But again, all this is doing is deciding when to alert you that your allocation is off. You can actually compare the plan to the actual on your own. It's not like so this isn't generating any really new data. All it's doing is turning that cell red if the difference exceeds your threshold. Yeah, use it if you want to. You don't have to use it. It's up to you. This calculates your plan, right? This is really nothing more than your total portfolio balance times your target. This is your actual, again, based on your holdings and the allocation matrix. And then this is the rebalance amount. This is what it's calculating you should add to bonds, to international stocks. Here's what you should sell from U.S. small cap, and here's what you should sell from U.S. stocks. And again, here, you have to decide if you're going to actually rebalance. That's up to you. How you're going to do it, which account you're going to do it in, which fund you're going to do it in, right? And it can get a little tricky, right? Because you think, well, this says I need to sell $46,000 in small cap, but how do I do it? I can sell VSMAX, but remember, 30% of that is really mid cap that we're categorizing as U.S. stocks. So if I went in and I said, okay, I'm going to sell 46,000 of VSMAX, it's not going to actually reduce your small cap by that amount. So one of the things that I'm working on is the ability to run what-if scenarios, have a way to say, okay, well, let's just pretend I'm going to sell this, that, and the other thing, or buy this, that, or that fund. What would that do to my allocation, and how can I figure that out without messing up what I already have inputted into the spreadsheet? Now, for now, one way you can do that is just create a copy, make a copy, and mess it up all you want, right? Because you've got this original. But I'm working on a way to do that inside of this spreadsheet. But this is what I've got. There it is, for better or worse. Now, the other thing this does is it totals all of your values by account name. Right now we've only got one account, so it's just that. And also then by taxable, pre-tax, and tax-free. Again, we've only got one, so it's there. Again, I'm going to show you a slightly more involved example in just a second. And then this is just a graphical presentation of this data. One thing I'll mention, if you were to go in and add more asset classes and more investment, or I guess more asset classes, so that these rows didn't stop at row 8, but went down to whatever, it could mess up this chart. So if you double click this and go to setup, this shows you the range. It's A4, which is the asset class. It starts at that cell. and it goes to H8, which would be that point. So if you added 2 more rows, you'd just go in and change this to H10. That's the number you'd have to change to redraw that chart. There are ways to do that dynamically. If I were an Excel Google Sheet ninja, I would have it done by now, but I'm not, so I don't. So there's some manual changes that you'd have to make. And in fact, we'll look at that in just a minute. Okay, so I've kind of walked through the whole sheet, and we're already into this video 20 minutes, but I'm going to just go through a slightly more complicated example. So I'm going to do, I'll keep a taxable account. I'm going to do my 401k, spouse 401k, my Roth IRA, and I'll just do spouse Roth IRA, and I'll just do my HSA. I guess that's fine. And so I want to add some additional asset classes. So let's do tips will be one. Trying to think if I want to add anything else. I think I might just add tips for now, and we'll do 10% in tips and reduce bonds to 15%. Let's check to make sure. Yeah, that equals 100. And now we'll leave the small cap. We'll leave all of these. For my own personal portfolio, I use mutual fund versions for some of these. We're going to add SCHD, which is a Schwab dividend ticker. Let's add some individual stocks. I'll pick the 2 that I own. I actually own 4, but I own a little bit of NVIDIA and Tesla, but it's literally a couple of shares. And by the way, if this were a stock picking channel, I wouldn't recommend either of those stocks, but in any event, it's not a stock picking channel. So we got Apple, we'll do BRK, we'll do B shares, because I can show you how that would work. Okay, we could make it more complicated. Oh, I do want to do, I want to do this VTINX, so let's do that. Whoops, VTINX. All right, so I've got my tickers, I've got my allocation, my asset classes, my target allocation, my accounts. So now I've got to fill out this matrix for the new tickers that I've added. So for SCHD, I'll just do 100% US stocks. I don't know, is there any small cap? Let's look at that. Maybe there's some small cap. I didn't think so. If there are, it's not much. Well, you never know. One thing I want to point out here, okay, there's 6. You notice I mentioned this, I'm only looking at small cap. You might want to look at mid cap too, but in my case, and this is true of my own portfolio, I don't target a specific allocation to mid cap. And so I don't feel a need to complicate my spreadsheet to add it, because I'm not going to rebalance to a certain percentage of mid cap. So, but you might want to. So you could add more asset classes. So anyway, we've got 6% small cap. So I'll go back to this and I'll make US stocks 94 and small cap 6%. Apple, I looked this up. I don't remember the exact number, but what I did was I said, how much of their sales is outside the US? And this may be incorrect, but it's close, I think. I'm gonna say 35% in the US and 65% is international. That's not necessarily how you might choose a different way to break down an individual stock, but given that with this spreadsheet, you can assign multiple asset classes to an investment, I thought, why not do that with individual stocks? So with Berkshire, it's a little trickier. He owns individual companies. Most of them are based in the US, but also Berkshire owns a lot of stock that does business around the world. I'm just going to take a guess. You could Google this and try to get more precise, but I'll put 2575. Now, VTINX, let me pull it up on Vanguard's site, and I'll show you. So what this does, this is a fund we recently bought in our target date retirement, or our traditional retirement accounts. It breaks it into 5 different funds. Now, we could go down the rabbit hole and break all of these 5 funds down into countless asset classes, and you can do whatever you want. But for me, I kind of group US and international bonds together. So it's 37 and 16. So that's 53. I'm just rounding. So we'll make bonds 53. It's got tips 17. It's got U.S. stock market is, we'll call it rounded to 18. We'll have to make sure this adds up to 100, but international, it's got 16. Now, so there it is. And how did I get so far over? That doesn't sound right. Let me just double check this. Bonds, 37, 47. That's, I added the wrong ones. 37, 47. Oh, it's 53. That's what I have, right? Yep. And total U.S. is 18. And international is 12. What did I put for international? There we go. Now, I could break these down further because remember, when we looked at the total U.S. fund, VTI, we broke it down 92 and 8. So I could take 8% of 18. That'd be what, 1 or 2%? You can do that if you want. We could say, let's make this 1.5 and make this 16.5. Yeah, it's up to you, right? So you can do the same thing with, well, these I'm not breaking down, so those I wouldn't change. Yeah, that's close enough. All right, so now I go to holdings, and how do we add another row? I like to just highlight it, copy it, and paste it. This is something else where I want to come up with a more elegant way to do all of this. So let's do this. I'm just going to arbitrarily pick some different accounts. This is a 401k, so it's pre-tax. This new line I've put in, we'll say, is spouse Roth IRA, so it's tax-free. And it's going to have SCHD in it. We'll just leave it at 1,000 shares. And then we'll edit this, copy. And I'll just use my keyboard here to paste it. And we'll say this is my HSA, which is tax-free, and it has Apple in it, Apple stock. See if it loads. All right. And this is how, by the way, how I would enter this as you're building out all, this sheet with all of your investments. Oops, hang on. I really need to come up with a more elegant way to deal with this, but this is fine for now. I'll do do I have a Roth? Yeah, I've got a Roth, so that's tax-free. We'll put Berkshire in that one. And then let's do one more, copy it, paste it, and we'll do, I'll do my 401k. We'll do spouse 401k, and we're going to put in the spouse as VTI and X. All right. So you'd build this out. I mean, in my case, I don't know how many rows we'll have in our actual portfolio, but you're going to have whatever number of rows. Again, I'm going to make this manual. So you'll just type those in yourself. You can look them up in Morningstar, and I'll get the weighted portfolio working. Gives you a weighted total of your expense ratio. Might not have that done immediately, but within the next day or so, I'll fix that. So I've got them all in. Now, if we go back to by asset class, you can see I've added tips here. So I've got another row. Let's see if how this worked. Yeah, it stopped at 8, the chart. So I'm going to take that and move it to a row 9. Let's see what that did. Yeah, so that gives us all 5 asset classes. You can see we've now got down here a lot more accounts, and we've got the values by account, which I find useful. And also, the values between Roth and HSAs, taxable and traditional. And then we've got the same data here, but just involving more accounts and more an additional asset class. Again, you'll see a lot of differences here because when I put in the holdings, I just put in 1,000 shares for every holding, but you'll put your actual portfolio in, and I'm guessing it'll be a little bit closer to your target allocation, but there you go. Again, double check the math on all of this. Please let me know if you see any errors, but that's how it works. So I guess it's a little more involved. In some ways, maybe you'll find the data entry, I don't know, maybe a little easier, maybe not. But it is, again, it's a way to assign multiple asset classes to a single investment. Again, can come in handy with target date retirement funds, with asset allocation funds. Keep in mind that these percentages, well, certainly with target date retirement funds, they'll absolutely change periodically. But even something like VTI, I don't know that it changes dramatically, but it will change. And in fact, you can see some of the historical changes. This one didn't change much. I don't know that VTI changes a lot, but it's something you might want to check periodically. I am thinking about whether to create a sheet that lists these allocations for some popular ETFs and mutual funds. I'm only hesitant because part of the assumption is what asset classes you want to use. You could take VTI and break it into large, mid, and small cap, right? Or you could break it into, I'll just use SCHD as an example, 9 different asset classes, right? Large value, large blend, large growth. That's all going to be very individual to what you're trying to accomplish and how you think through your asset allocation and rebalancing. So there's the new spreadsheet. I've already taken up too much of your time. Thanks for listening if you've lasted this long. You'll see the link to the spreadsheet below. It'll prompt you to make a copy for yourself. I won't have access to that. It's all yours. I don't get access to your spreadsheet. Please fill out that form and let me know what you think, how any errors you see, things that are confusing, things you'd like to see improved or features added. I really just see this as sort of the tip of the iceberg. I really hope to do a lot more with the spreadsheet, but I wanted to get this new feature out and in large part so you guys can test it and tell me what's wrong with it. So there you go. That's the spreadsheet. Hope it's helpful to you. And there you go. Until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.